Hello and welcome to the Board of Education meeting on February 20th. The time is 5:30. If you can please call the roll.
Mrs. Arvanitis,
Here.
Mrs. Assef,
Here.
Mrs. Caforio,
Here.
Mr. Collins, Dr. Henry,
Here.
Mrs. Hostler,
Here.
and Mrs. Troutman.
Here.
6 board members present, 1 absent. Can we have a motion to go into closed session?
I move that the Board of Education move into closed session for the purposes of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. 5 ILCS 122C1. Collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. 5 ILCS 122C2. Student disciplinary issues, cases. 5 ILCS 122C9. The placement of individual students in special education programs and other matters relating to individual students. 5 ILCS 122C10. Discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act, whether for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by Section 2.065 ILCS 122C21.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Troutman, second by Ms. Caforio. Please call the vote.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio,
Yes.
Mrs. Assef,
Yes.
Dr. Henry,
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler,
Yes.
Mrs. Arvanitis.
Yes, 6 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent. Motion passes. The board will move into closed session. Good evening. Sorry we're a little late. Welcome to the regular scheduled board meeting. Today is Tuesday, February 20th. It is 7:05 PM. The board has been in closed session for items listed on the agenda since 5:30. We have 7 board members present and 0 absent. At this time, I ask that we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Great. Tonight, we will start out our spotlights and recognitions. We'll jump to item 4A, which is our High School Students Illinois Music Educator Association, ILMEA. Welcome.
Hello, good evening, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Patrick Baker. I'm the Director of Arts, PE, and Health for District 205. It's an honor and a privilege to be with you this evening as we celebrate the accomplishments of some of our outstanding high school student musicians. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words about these special accomplishments. The Illinois Music Education Association sponsors festivals in 9 districts across Illinois, as well as a combined all-state festival. We belong to District 1, which is among the most competitive of the 9 districts. The students before you prepared, auditioned, and were selected from among thousands of their peers across the state of Illinois to be placed as a performer in one of the highly selective all-state ensembles, or to be honored for the excellence of their original compositions and performances. These are not small accomplishments, and we commend each of the student musicians honored tonight for their tenacious work ethic, their commitment to their artistry. Each of them has done an excellent job representing themselves, their ensembles, their teachers, their school, District 205, and the entire Elmhurst community. I'd like to read their names now.
Mr. Baker,
Yes.
can I hold 1 second?
Please.
Are the students here tonight?
I believe there are.
Can we
some
have
there,
them come
yes.
up and stand right in front before you announce their names?
Please,
Thank you.
absolutely. All state musicians, please come on forward.
You can stand right up here and face Mr. Baker. Dr. Baker, sorry.
That's okay. As you can see, this was a banner year for District 205. So I will now read the names of all of our all-state musicians from this year from York High School. Noah Choi, Orchestra. Anthony D'Alessandro, Band. Sam Deverman, Orchestra. Julian Dominguez, Band. Liliana Galarza, Honors Chorus. Adam Higgins, Band. Ziana Liu, Orchestra. Caden Magner, Band. Colin Mahoney, Band. Vasilios Malamis, Band. Matthew Markwald, Orchestra. Logan McNichols, All-State Chorus. Isabella Nichols, Orchestra. Andrew Prather, Band. Emma Salamanca, Band. Jane Scadam, Orchestra. Audrey Stanton, Orchestra. Nathan Walker, All-State Chorus. John Fromm, Composition. Carissa Gilly, Composition. And Devin Smigo, Composition. Can we give our students a round of applause? On behalf of the Performing Arts Department at York High School, we extend our proudest congratulations to each and every one of you. Also want to pause to say thank you to our board, to our district and building administration, to the families of our students for your ongoing support of our award-winning music program in District 205. This would not be possible without your continued commitment to music education here in Elmhurst. Thank you all and have a wonderful evening. Yes, yes, yes.
If anyone wants a more organized photo, feel free to do it. There we go. We can see everyone.
Hi, thank you. We're trying a little bit of a different format, but I'll take the honors of congratulating you all on what a tremendous achievement. And Dr. Baker, don't go hiding back there. We know that you and your staff, working with our students and your parents and families who are supporting you as you continue your music education growth, but most importantly, you get this awesome opportunity of celebrating your skill and your talent with the whole state, and what a way to be awarded for all of your hard work. Congratulations on everything you've accomplished. We're looking so forward to seeing what you'll do in the future, and thanks again. Good job. And I just noticed a couple more of our staff members all the way in the back. Thank you to you all too for not just being here tonight, but working with our students and supporting their growth. Okay, next up. Oh, they're already up? Yes, Emerson.
We're ready. We like to keep things moving.
Emerson Elementary School, we have a spotlight tonight. Go, it's your field here.
Yes, good evening to the Board of Education and everyone who is here. My name is Shalene Delackery. I am the very fortunate principal of Emerson.
I'm Anne-Marie Mitchell. I'm a teacher at Emerson.
And I'm Josh Shimura. I'm the assistant principal at Emerson.
So we are very excited to be here tonight to share about a new program that we just launched this month, actually, called Mentoring Maestros. And the idea is that we are continuing to promote, I forgot this was animated. So we are really excited to be kicking off a mentoring program with our teachers. We have about 21 teachers who have volunteered to mentor students. The purpose we'll get into a little bit on the next slide, but we wanted to make sure that we are aligned to the district priorities, and we feel that Mentoring Maestros promotes both the engagement, engaging our students in their own learning, as well as empowering them to be self-advocates and to grow both socially and emotionally, and probably academically as well, depending on what the topics are that they discuss with their mentees.
All right, so the purpose of Mentoring Maestros is to pair up students with a trusted adult within our building during the regular school day. It allows students to build a connection with someone that is not their gen ed teacher or their specials teacher. In their meetings, the pair can talk about topics ranging from friendships to school to their adorable dogs, whatever they want. They can play games, make crafts, or just chat. It's really up to the mentor and the mentee what their meetings look like.
And as you know, there are plenty of benefits to mentoring. It's most important for students to understand that there are people who care about them, that assures them that they are not alone and dealing with day-to-day challenges. They have so many positive effects on the students as well as on the teachers and educators involved. So mentoring connects a young person to and helps them grow personally as well as develop in social and economic opportunities. I'm going to try to read it over there. It's a little far for me. But okay, 92% of people who are involved in mentoring are more likely to volunteer regularly in the community. 75% are more likely to have a leadership position in a club or in a sports team. And 22% are more likely to have experienced a strong sense of belonging while growing up, which is really important for all of our students.
So one of the reasons we wanted to begin this program was because we were looking at the needs of our students, both through behavior data as well as panorama data, and noticed some trends in students who were not feeling strong in self-advocating for themselves. So one of the ways that we're going to also continue the effectiveness of the program, as well as make improvements and hopefully grow it as well, is by using the panorama data that we have at our disposal. We're just now starting the mentoring program, so when we reassess the panorama assessment in a couple months, we hope to see some growth. Even though it will only have been for a couple months, we do expect to see some growth. We will also be conducting a teacher survey to help the teachers assess those 3rd through 5th grade students. 3rd through 5th grade students self-assess themselves. In K2, the teachers assess themselves. So in 3-5, we'd also like the teachers to give a rating of how they see the students who are participating, how they're doing in growth, with a growth mindset, as well as self-management. And this is a picture of just a few of our mentors. We had our initial kickoff meeting today. As I said earlier, we have 21 teachers who volunteered their time. So that means that we will have 21 students who are being mentored. And this ranges from teachers, paras. I believe our custodian is also mentoring someone. So we're really excited that it's really an all hands on deck approach. And I also want to thank Mrs. Mitchell and Mrs. Schmura for helping create this and come up with the idea, as well as the beautiful name of Mentoring Maestros. So that is what we are really excited about happening in Emerson. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Sounds like a great opportunity for our students and adults in the building. We will move on to item number 5, which is public comments on the agenda. The public comment section of the board meeting provides an opportunity for community members to share information and perspectives with the Board of Education. And while the board does not respond during public comments, we are listening and thoughtfully considering the messages being shared. Each of us have high expectations for our community and ask that public comments are respectful and do not mention any individuals by name. The way in which we publicly engage when sharing differing perspectives is an opportunity to model healthy and respectful discourse for our students and greater community while creating an environment of collaboration and partnership. There will be up to 30 minutes allocated for public comments, with up to 3 minutes per public comment speaker concerning items on this agenda. The board secretary will give a reminder when you have 30 seconds left. Let's begin with our first speaker.
Mr. Chavez.
I may go over 15 seconds or so please let me speak. Good evening. In August 2021, Governor Pritzker signed 2 bills into law implementing new standards on sex education in K-12 schools. While some districts have delayed implementation, it's only a matter of time before this curriculum is put in front of your kids. It's worth mentioning that D205 board members are in favor of it. The new standards require children to be able to define and explain the differences between cisgender, transgender, non-binary, and explain that gender expression and gender identity exist along a spectrum. To be clear, these are political and ideological concepts, not academic ones. It's not a scientific fact that gender exists along a spectrum. It's a political opinion, full stop. Across the state, the 2023 Illinois report card data shows only 34% of public school students can read at grade level, and only 27% can do math at grade level. In D205, achievement gaps are widening. Middle school math scores are abysmal. And at Sandburg Middle School, 0% of low-income 8th graders are meeting standard, not one. Half of our 8,300 students are not having their academic needs met if proficiency is the metric. This begs the question, what are Illinois public schools prioritizing? Earlier this month, radical progressive Democrat State Rep Ann Stava Murray introduced a bill, HB 4876. If passed, the bill would consider your son or daughter abused if you do not consent to harmful gender-affirming procedures, such as puberty blockers. Parents who refuse to affirm will be labeled unsafe and abusive and can face up to 15 years in prison and fines of up to $25,000. What seems to be happening is the state of Illinois is working hand in glove with radicalized teacher unions to strip away parental rights. The Illinois Federation of Teachers endorsed Ann Stava Murray. Children are being groomed at very young ages to accept radical progressive ideas about gender and sexuality, and the state is building a hyper-politicized infrastructure to drive a wedge between you and your kids. This is no longer about, why is this a topic for a school board meeting? Because K-12 schools using taxpayer money are being used as the primary facilitator excuse me, for this political agenda and ideological agenda and putting parents and their kids at risk. This is no longer about fostering a safe, welcoming, and inclusive climate in our schools. This is about compelling you to conform to a radical, progressive orthodoxy, or else.
30 seconds.
Vigilant parent-driven organizations such as Awake Illinois and Parents Matter Coalition are standing in the breach in support of parents and the right to raise their own children in accordance to their own morals and values. The petition I'm going to put in front of you asks a simple question. Should written consent from a minor's parent or guardian be required for, among other things, gender modification procedures, gender identification counseling, or gender therapy? Yes or no? The petition is being widely circulated, and if enough signatures are received, the question will be placed on the November 5th, 2024 Illinois general election ballot. I have the petition here, so if anyone in the front of the room would like to sign it, raise your hand, and I'll give it to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Stanton.
Hello, this lovely room full of decision makers. We are parents of 3 musicians that went through 205. This was my last one, my baby, and I just wanted to tell you how very important this music program has been to my family. It's been a bedrock. It's been there every day, and very necessary for their education. That All-State concert was amazing. I wish you could all have seen it. If anything, there's America the Beautiful they did at the end, the combined performance of all of the musicians. It was just amazing. I was so proud of York being there. They had some great representation, and that's because we are committed. I'm aging out of this program. I still live here, and I really hope that you continue to have this commitment to music education, because it is a part of education for my kids. Thank you very much.
No other comments.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who took the time to voice their concerns, support, or perspectives to the Board of Education. Common practice of the board is to follow up with public commenters after the board meeting as needed. We will move on to item number 6, the approval of the board meeting minutes. Item A is approval of regular board meeting minutes from January 16th, 2024. Are there any changes to those minutes? Seeing none, those minutes stand as is. And item B is the approval of the closed session minutes, January 16th, 2024. Those minutes stand as presented. Reports and presentations. Item 7, we're looking at A, D205 assessment system, the winter update 23-24. Dr. Campbell.
Throughout each school year, D205 school teams administer diagnostic, formative, and summative assessments using evidence-based and objective growth measures in an effort to execute data-driven instruction. Assessments include state assessments annually, local assessments several times per year, and classroom assessments frequently. Student performance on these measures is regularly reported to the Board of Education and community to ensure that there is alignment in systems and that resources are allocated appropriately. Tonight, it is with great pleasure that I introduce a colleague, Dr. Jacob Wirtz, who is Director of Research and Program Analysis, who is going to walk us through tonight's presentation, which focuses on the winter results from only one, of our local district assessments, the NWEA MAP assessment, as well as give a preview of results from our fall PSAT NMSQT, which all of the letters, which all York 11th graders completed. Dr. Wirtz.
Thank you very much, Dr. Campbell. Good evening. My name is Dr. Jacob Wirtz. I am the new Director of Research and Program Analysis. I joined the district in October of last year, and I'm thrilled to be here with you tonight. to share an update on student growth and achievement data from recent national assessments, as well as some information about how D205 leaders and educators are using the data to monitor progress and ensure student success. In tonight's presentation, I'll be sharing data regarding the performance on our most recent round of MAP testing, which was completed in late January, as well as our York 11th graders' performance on the PSAT NMS QT National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, which was completed back in October, shortly after the last board update on the assessment system. To provide you with some context for the assessment data, I'll begin with an overview of our comprehensive assessment system, which includes state testing as well as teacher-created and state-mandated testing, as well as a summary of the growth modeling system we use to analyze and monitor performance on these assessments. And then following the presentation of the results, I'll provide some more information about how our school leadership teams are taking action in response to the student and classroom level data generated by the assessments. Assessment data serves several important purposes. As D205 administrators shared at the Committee of the Whole meeting earlier this month, analyzing and taking action based on student data aligned to our curriculum and standards is critical to our efforts to further promote student success in specific areas such as math, reading, and language development. But assessment data also plays a vital role in identifying students for specialized services and monitoring progress towards their individualized goals. At the board and community level, here tonight, we report assessment data to engage the community in our shared goal of promoting student success. Earlier this school year, the board reviewed assessment data during 3 meetings starting in October. This spring and summer, we'll provide the board with further updates as progress is made in implementation of the strategic plan and as students complete their spring assessments. Tonight, we'll be discussing data from NWEA MAP Growth and the SAT Suite. These are but 2 resources that we use universally, in addition to state-mandated Illinois Assessment of Readiness and Illinois Science Assessment, to inform our Tier 1 instructional practices and identify students for intervention and enrichment. For example, the winter MAP data that we're presenting today is also used to identify students eligible for REACH programming, as well as for our summer acceleration programs beyond this school year. School-based teams are using this data to determine which students need intervention or enrichment within the current school year. For context, other assessments are used for diagnostic screening or to monitor progress for students receiving specialized services. Additionally, I want to highlight that these other components of our comprehensive assessment system provide ongoing evidence of whether students are learning what their teachers are teaching, as well as to ensure that instruction is aligned with grade level standards. Educators and administrators in D205 examine data from NWEA MAP and SAT Suite alongside these other individual curriculum-aligned assessments to monitor students' growth and adjust instruction to meet their needs. Before getting directly into the results, I'm going to provide a brief description of the local growth model that D205 adopted in partnership with ECRA that began last June to monitor and report on student growth across our entire suite of assessments. The ECRA local growth model allows us to examine the observed scores on standardized assessments, including MAP and SAT, in comparison with personalized projections for every student, classroom, grade level, demographic group, school, and the district, based on past performance on the entire suite of standardized assessments. In summary, our ongoing process for monitoring student growth consists of 3 steps. We enter students' individualized scores from each assessment, compare these scores to the score students were individually projected to achieve based on their past performance on standardized tests, and we compute growth metrics for each class, school, and the district as a whole that averages across students' individualized rates of growth. ECRA then summarizes these growth metrics with indicators aligned with high expected, lower than expected, or unsatisfactory growth. And these are the indicators that we'll be reviewing tonight. First, we'll look at NWEA MAP reading assessment data. MAP assessment has 2 sections, reading and math, each of which is taken 3 times per year on a computer by all D205 students in grades K through 8. The MAP assessment suite has several benefits, including the fact that it's highly adaptive. No 2 students see the exact same test questions. As students answer questions correctly or incorrectly, the test adjusts the set of questions it provides to efficiently identify students' achievement levels, as well as specific skill levels within math and reading, such as geometry or vocabulary. A further benefit of the MAP system is that it's aligned with state and national assessments, including IAR and SAT. Without further ado, here is our growth indicators from winter on MAP reading in K through 8. D205 students are continuing to exhibit expected growth on MAP reading, in line with their performance on the fall assessment, which is shown in that blurred column second from the right, which you reviewed in the fall. These scores show that on a high level, district-wide, our students are growing in line with our district's high expectations. The breakdown of the distribution of student growth, shown in the columns to the left, indicates that about 70% of all students met their expected growth target, and another 15% of students, on average across those classes, achieved higher than expected growth. This district-level overview that indicates that about 85% of our students are meeting or exceeding their expected growth. Internally, we look beneath this data at the classroom and school level to identify areas where there's opportunity. Students may be in the green, blue, or yellow categories. In addition to the district-wide or grade level-wide growth measures, we also monitor demographic groups, including English language learners, students with disability, and students classified as low income. In reading, our K through 8 students in these groups continue to exhibit expected growth, as 80 to 85% of students are in the high or expected growth ranges. In addition to the results from the ECRA local growth model, we continue to monitor the progress and achievement of D205 students in comparison with their grade level peers nationally. Now this is, I'm realizing now exactly how small those numbers are. Sorry, it's my first time in the room. What this chart shows in blue is D205 students who score at the 50th percentile within our district. So the typical student or the median student, to be statistical about it, and how they compare to their grade level peers nationally. It's lined up left through right, grades K through 8. So we can see that across all students in our district, the median student or the typical student in D205 performed in reading this winter at about the equivalent to about the 73rd percentile nationally, so far above average. The dashed blue line that you see there is the same scores from the fall. So we are also right in line with where we were in the fall. We also look at where our students are who are performing above average within the district. So students in the 75th percentile. And how does an above average D205 student compare to their peers at the same grade level nationally? In reading, they, across all grade levels, performed as well or better than 88% of their grade level peers nationally this winter. And again, as you can see with that comparison to the dashed line, pretty much right in line with where we were in the fall. And finally, we'll look at the below average or 25th percentile within D205 students and where they perform. In reading, district-wide, their performance is equivalent to about the 50th, the 49th percentile to be precise nationally. So this information is helpful as we work in our Tier 1 instruction in reading and recognizing that the curriculum resources that we're using, insofar as they're targeted towards a typical student at a certain grade level nationally, is actually aligned with about where a 25th percentile student is within our classrooms. And to provide some further context, this slide provides that same data all condensed into a year-over-year comparison. So the dashed line on the previous slides represented where we were in the fall. The dashed line on this slide represents where we were last winter. So again, the comparison, in fact, in reading, we were right on the same mark. 73 median student in Elmhurst this winter performed at the 73rd percentile, and that was the same as it was last winter. Next, we'll look at MAP math data. Again, as I mentioned, there are two sections of the NWA MAP assessment, which are taken 3 times a year. This is our math data. And as with reading, we see very similar results. Our students continue to meet expected growth across all grade levels, as well as across all demographic groups that we monitor in K through 8. And again, to walk through the national comparison so that we continue to monitor and report how students in our district are performing on this assessment compared to their grade level peers nationally. In mathematics, our median students district-wide performed as well or better than 76% of their grade level peers nationally. And above average students within our district performed as well or better than 90% of their grade level peers nationally. I know that percentile figures can often be difficult to sort of wrap everybody's head around. So just to reiterate that, another way of looking at it is that 1 out of 4 students, the top 1 out of 4 students in Elmhurst, are performing as well as the top 10% of students nationally in mathematics. And our below average students scoring at the 25th percentile within our district are scoring above the median nationally as well or better than 53% of their peers. And this again provides that year over year rather than fall to winter assessment. And we can see in math, we actually saw a slight uptick where this winter, the median students district-wide were performing as well or better than 76% of peers nationally, whereas that was 69% a year ago. Next, I'll move on to the PSAT NMSQT data. Before getting into the results, I want to emphasize that this is the first year that D205 has offered this assessment universally to 11th graders. So the state of Illinois has changed, as I believe you're all aware, assessment suite from ACT to SAT several years ago. Within the SAT suite, there are IAR components and other components in SAT 8-9 and SAT 10. The SAT college entrance exam, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with, and this PSAT NMSQT, the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, which 11th graders nationally optionally can take in the fall of their junior year. And this is the first year that we have given the opportunity to every D205 student to take it in a regular school day. Providing that PSAT and MSQT to all students has several benefits that I just want to touch on before getting into the results, right? It gives our students, all students, the opportunity to gain familiarity with the SAT test format. We can think of the P in PSAT as standing for practice. So this is an opportunity for students to sharpen those skills before they take the SAT college readiness, college entrance exam. It also promotes equity within the district by ensuring that all students who have the potential to qualify for national merit scholarships complete the assessment. Often that's an issue in equity things where there are inequities in who signs up to take optional or voluntary assessments. And since this assessment is aligned with really an opportunity to earn money to fund a college education, it promotes equity by offering it to all students in our district. And finally, a benefit is that it gives us and our community and you, the board, another data point to track to monitor how we're doing when it comes to our students' growth and achievement. So these are the results from our ECRA local growth model in reading and writing and math, as well as the composite of those two sections, so that's the two sections that make up the PSAT. And here we see that all of our students are meeting expected growth, or our students on average are meeting expected growth on both sections of the exam. Another important thing about our ECRA growth model is that it's based on prior performance of assessments. So this is taking into account the student's historic IAR and PSAT 8-9 data to make these projections of where our students should be growing during their time at York. And we are seeing that our students are meeting expected growth. This looks a little bit different because there's only one grade level. It's our 11th graders, but this is the same percentile comparison, all condensed. So within reading and writing, our students who were in the median in D205 or at York High School performed as well as the 65th percentile nationally. And there you can also see the comparisons for our above average and below average within the district students, and their comparisons nationally both look favorable. As well as within mathematics, our median students in the district are scoring at the 60th percentile nationally. And just in closing, to again sort of contextualize why we have this data, why we collect and look at this data in the middle of the year, I'm going to touch on a couple points around how we are taking action and how I've taken action with this data since joining the district in October. So first is just a refresher of a slide that you saw at the data presentation in October from our learning and teaching team around various steps that they take to take action, including identifying caseloads for interventionists, collaborating around the data, we're looking at curriculum implementation and how better curriculum implementation and alignment can drive growth that shows up in these scores. So you can review that. I'm also going to talk more now about how we're taking action and some of the steps I've taken since joining the district in October to strengthen our leaders' capacity to take action with the mid-year assessment data. At the mid-year data collaborative meeting earlier this month, school team leaders learned to apply resources from the National Forum for Education Statistics and Harvard University's Strategic Data Project to plan actions in response to insights they developed by analyzing the mid-year MAP, PSAT, and other student data that we collect. And another important tool that D205 leaders are using in the process is the ECRA platform itself. Beneath the broad board reporting tools for progress monitoring, the ECRA platform really gives us tools to analyze at a classroom or a school or even an individual student level to identify which students are making expected growth, making above average growth, and so forth, so that we can respond appropriately. And finally, another approach I want to talk about is just the data meetings that I've had the opportunity to observe in a couple of our elementary schools, where the school teams, grade level teams, will actually meet and look at MAP data right alongside other data from students' classroom work and students' work, so that the teachers are able to make determinations around intervention and, for instance, which students need to continue working with the reading interventionist or not. So there's lots of ways that this data is used to report to you and as well as used within our schools and continues to drive towards student success. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wertz. We will open the conversation to the board if there's any questions, comments. Jim?
Can you go back to 2 slides? The PSAT slide.
This one in math or in reading? They're on
Number 25 or number 26?
You know, I don't think it matters. So let's just compare apples to apples. So by the time our kids get to the PSAT, our 50th percentile performs as well or better than 60% of the 11th graders nationally. Now, if we go back to those MAP scores, if I remember correctly, our 50th percentile performs better than, 73 or 75%?
Mm-hmm.
So are you looking into why there's a difference between elementary, you're testing the PSAT at sophomore year, fall of sophomore year, is that correct?
This fall of junior year.
Fall of junior year, I'm sorry. So any insight, or are you working on developing some insights as to why our 50th percentile slips from the 75th or 76th percentile down to the 60th percentile?
That's a really, really great question. We are working on some insights into that. Later on in our presentation, we're actually going to be speaking to some of the instructional materials that we're proposing. And in that, 2 of my colleagues are going to talk about our analysis of that data and really being more thoughtful about the actual progression of our students through the journey of excellence and making sure that we're pairing high quality resources with instructional best practices to ensure that we maintain the level of proficiency of our students. So yes, response to your question, that is something that is top of mind and something that we're definitely digging into.
Okay, yeah, yes is all I was looking for.
Yeah.
And then just, and this may require a personal tutorial at some future point on your part, if you can go back to one of your very first slides that showed what defines as the numbers that defined expected growth versus low growth versus high growth. Yes, there we are. So expected growth is negative 0.29 to positive 0.29. What units are we, what is the unit that we're looking at negative 0.29?
Sure. So you can think of it's a plus or minus around what the projection is, right? So it's an effect size is what the unit is, and what the score relates to is you can think about, it's a point estimate of exactly what I project your score is going to be, but I recognize, but the negative 0.29 to plus 0.29 is a recognition statistically that that's kind of a fuzzy number, that there's some fuzziness around what that is. So where we project an actual number, a precise number down to 2 decimal points, the statistics behind that recognize that there's some fuzziness in terms of how accurate that projection can be. And so sort of being right at 0 would mean you hit the projection exactly of what we expected your growth score to be. 0 would be you're right on target. But because it's, you want to be a little bit fuzzy in the projection because not everybody gets exactly right on target. That's why the expected growth range is kind of a band right around being right on target.
Okay, let me verbalize that, and you tell me if this is accurate. So if NMEA says, all right, a third grader, based upon how they did on the test, between third grade and fourth grade, you're going to grow, to make the number simple, 100 points. And a student grows anywhere from 70 to 130 points, roughly, then they've hit expected growth.
That's more or less the right way to be thinking about, what the projected growth would be.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay. These are just some clarifying questions so the community understands. Any of these, does the charts when winter growth reading, the next one, any of these, does the low growth, does that incorporate the lower than expected growth and unsatisfactory growth from that chart that you were just looking at with Jim?
Yes.
So is there a reason that we combine, we use these growth scorings on that, whatever page this is, the 4 dot four color dots, and then we combine those last 2 groups together when comparing the groups? Is there a reason we do that?
The short answer to the question is that this is how the information comes out of ECRA in terms of these 3 categories of students sort of being above or within or below, and this is a percentage of students who are within either above, below, or within the expected range. But that is actually something that I'd be happy to look into further in terms of if it is possible to disaggregate the data out to report separately on low growth versus unsatisfactory.
I just wanted to make sure I understood that third column incorporates both our lower than expected growth and unsatisfactory growth.
Yes, that's correct. The numbers total to 100%. So
Okay.
that's absolutely correct.
Okay, and then for the national comparison, winter to winter on reading, where were we in 2023? I noticed on the math one, you gave us the comparison of where we were at 2023. We were 69% in 2023 compared to 76% this year. Where were we on reading?
Oh, we were at 73%.
So we made 0.
There was no change,
No change?
Yes. I mean, it just averaged out that way, right? You can see that there are fluctuations with certain grade levels that would be different, but across the district, the median was the 73rd percentile in both years.
All right, and I got one more because Jim clarified my other one. In the PSAT performance, do we have that broken down by different demographics like we do in the other, in the K through 8 grades?
Yes, we're able to get that information out of ECRA because that's certainly something that we can talk. I don't have the slide here with it. You're talking about
The PSAT
this breakdown for the
Right.
PSAT.
Right, for the
Yeah, so part of the
PSAT.
challenge is that when with these demographic groups, when we're only looking at 11th graders, the numbers are kind of quite small in terms of how many students are talking about fitting into this. So that's one of the challenges in sort of having a good growth indicator.
Oh, so that's the reason we don't really talk about it, is because the quantity of students is so low in these categories, in the demographics? I guess I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, so that's the reason why that slide isn't in here tonight. But we can look at that information. It's something we monitor individually, as I mentioned, like looking at individualized student data. We're also monitoring, looking at it within a student level.
And I get that this is the first year, but I think it's something just like the other K through 8s, we should be looking at those demographics as well. Thank you.
Agree. Thank you.
Just one point of clarification that was mentioned on the winter 2022-2023 comparison to winter 23-24. We're not talking about the same. It's not comparing the same cohort of students. So it's just giving a point in time, a snapshot as to how our students performed across the grade bands the winter of 2023 compared to the winter of 23-24. So just wanted to, so we are seeing growth, but it's not comparing a cohort. So it's not the same students that were, let's say, in the 4th grade, now comparing those students to how they performed in 5th grade. I just wanted to clarify that.
It's 4th grade last year with 4th grade this year, so a different set of students being assessed. I had just, if I can, I think this one's a simple one. So when you're looking here, I just want to make sure I'm clarifying what the little paragraph on the left says there. So across all grades, we could use this one as an example. We're at math, right? D205 students in the 50th percentile, so the top 50% of D205 students performed as well or better than 76% of their peers. So the top 50% D205 student is in the top 23% nationally?
Correct.
Right, just want to make sure I was reading that. So 50th percentile in D205 is actually on this specific test point in time in math, top 23% in the nation.
Yep.
Wow. Jim had one more.
So to kind of aggregate growth from K through 8, we can use these RIT scores on the NMAA test, right? So if we were to look at a student's growth in any math or reading, we can use the RIT scores from the NMA and thank you. It's just too many letters. How do we measure a student's growth in high school? Do we administer a test first semester freshman year and then compare that to their SAT score that they take second semester junior year?
So one possibility, and one of the reasons I think, I wasn't here at the time the decision was made, but the reasons to add the PSAT and MSQT in 11th grade is that it will begin to give us that longitudinal picture so that we can look at students' growth from the PSAT 8-9, the PSAT 10, the PSAT and MSQT. Be easier if we could just call it the PSAT 11. And the SAT. So the College Board, which publishes that suite of assessments, they also put out measures, sort of indicators of like what expected growth is from test to test, as well as college readiness benchmarks. So now that we have this PSAT and MSQT assessment and we continue to monitor it, we'll be able to look at that kind of growth data.
Okay, so can I infer from what you said, we are administering the PSAT 8-9 and 9-10 And then,
Yeah, I believe that's correct. Carrie, do you want to add something?
Yes, so in the spring of 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, students take PSAT 9, PSAT 10, and then SAT. So this is our first year where, right, we had all juniors take PSAT and MSQT in the fall of their junior year. And so do we have currently a spring test for our freshmen and sophomores? We don't currently. Something that some other districts do that we're currently exploring is the idea of giving those assessments. Because we are a unit district, though, our high school looks at IAR and MAP assessments from 8th grade as well, right? So they're utilizing the assessment data that we have about the students, but then we're also thinking about, again, looking at that growth over time in the SAT suite in particular.
yeah, but I mean, it's hard to translate the state test to the PSAT test. And you're thinking about administering the PSAT test in 9th grade. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, something that other districts do that we couldn't also do, but also wanting to have a balanced assessment. So it is weighing the pros and cons right now, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I encourage the use of consistent data, so thank you.
And then one thing I just wanted to highlight that I know you talked about at another meeting, but you're using the PSAT data for our juniors to recommend or help provide supports through our SAT prep program, correct? To then, when they take the SAT, I assume, we'll be looking at their performance from the fall to the spring. Could you just talk about that a little bit?
Yes, so students who didn't meet the benchmarks, so PSAT 10 has one set of benchmarks for EBRW and math, and then they go up 30 points for PSAT and MSQT. So if students didn't meet those benchmarks or were within 10 points of them for that margin of error, they can receive Kaplan SAT prep at a reduced cost. And so our division chairs, I think about 2 weeks ago, reached out to all those students, right? So if you're an English language learner, have an IEP, or a low-income student, or didn't meet those benchmarks, we made a personal phone call to you to encourage you to sign up for Kaplan SAT prep and answer any questions parents had about that. So that data is being used alongside also PSAT 10 data, so either or data point.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Dr. Wertz, thank you so much for the update. Appreciate all your work on this.
Thank you.
We will move on to 7B, which is instructional materials selection and adoption for the 2024-25 school year. Dr. Campbell?
So Elmhurst District 205 is seeking to adopt instructional materials for use for SY 24-25 school year. This process is in accordance with our Board of Education Policy 62110, instructional material selection and adoption. And so I'm pleased to have my colleagues, Ms. Lyons and Ms. Leischel, to walk the board through this process and to share those recommendations for material adoptions.
Okay, so I'll kick us off. Tonight's instructional materials presentation focuses on our district-wide priority of student success, specifically the objective of aligning curricular resources, programs, and instructional practices to research, standards, and data. The learning and teaching team has shared this slide previously, which showcases the phases that the district takes to identify opportunities to elevate instruction and promote student outcomes. Carrie and I will highlight these phases tonight to illustrate the steps taken to identify opportunities to elevate instructional materials and programming in the content areas of social studies, world language, and math. The first phase in the process of identifying opportunities to elevate instruction and promote student outcomes includes a deep analysis of both student and teacher data. Highlighted on this slide are two examples of the student achievement data analyzed for the content areas of social studies and world language. On the left-hand side of the slide, the AP exams and pass rate by year data is highlighted as we are recommending specific text tonight for AP Spanish Literature and Culture, which will be a new course offered at York High School next year, and that will promote both an increase in the number of exams taken, as well as an accelerated percentage of students earning a 3 or higher on the AP exams. On the right-hand side of the slide, data from the Illinois Assessment of Readiness for ELA in grades 3 through 8 is highlighted as this data supported the analysis for identification of social studies curricular material, which is also a focus for tonight. Both tables showcase how the district continues to move students to higher levels of proficiency with steady growth over the last 2 years. And the district recognizes that opportunities remain to elevate student outcomes and support instructional shifts in teachers' practice. It is important that we build on the increase in student outcomes that the district has experienced through the adoption of high-quality curricular resources in other content areas, like our most recent elementary school ELA curricular adoption, which led to elevated outcomes on IAR. Continuing to build on this success, which pairs high-quality curricular resources with strong professional development and teacher coaching, the district intends to accelerate student outcomes by recommending resources for social studies and world language tonight. In addition to student data, the district engages stakeholders at all levels to ensure that feedback is provided about what teachers and leaders need to effectively meet students' needs and shift practice. Through the use of formal and informal surveys and steering committees, the district analyzes teachers' data and triangulates this with student data to identify opportunities for improvement. For example, in grades 6 through 8 for ELA instruction, 100% of teachers report creating their own materials to teach writing. Through analysis of IAR data, the area of written expression is an opportunity for growth across the middle grades. As such, this feedback from teachers affirms the need for high-quality curricular resources that promote students' writing and accelerates teachers' practice in writing instruction. In addition to analyzing student and teacher data, the learning and teaching team examined the district's current instructional materials for social studies and world language and how closely they align to research-based practices. The rope is not on this slide, but I'll bring it back in March. It's coming in March. I had it on there, but it couldn't fit. I knew it was coming. I was ready, but it'll be back. On the rope. On the left-hand side of the screen, there are 2 visuals that represent the research used to analyze the district's social studies materials. In 2022, ISB launched revised Illinois social studies standards with 6 aligned competencies. ISB identified these competencies that aligned with the revised Illinois social science standards and focus on ensuring students recognize and articulate perspectives through inquiry-based learning, so that graphic kind of at the top. On the right-hand side of the screen, there are 2 images that represent the research-based practices utilized to evaluate the district's world language materials. The ACTFL scale is a globally recognized method for describing foreign language proficiency scale levels, and the 5C goal areas that you see on the far right of the slide represent communication, cultures, connections, comparisons, and communities, and these represent the multidimensional nature of the language standards and stress the application of learning a language beyond the instructional setting, ensuring that students are prepared to apply the skills and understanding measured by the language standards, as well as bring a global competence to their future careers and experiences. I will now pass it to Carrie. She does not have the rope on her slide to highlight the phases taken to identify opportunities to elevate student outcomes related to math.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Katie. So we followed a similar process in math with the analysis of student and teacher data to start. On the right-hand side of the slide, you see student achievement data from the IAR and SAT that we've seen before. Although we are excited about the upward trend in students meeting proficient or exceeding on both assessments last year, we want to continue to accelerate this growth and elevate student outcomes overall. As you remember, last year, the Board of Education supported the approval of illustrative math for algebra, which D205 students take in 7th, 8th, or 9th grade. No matter when students take algebra, all students are currently utilizing all teachers are currently utilizing illustrative math this year. While we are monitoring student progress across all grade levels, the table on the left shows our middle school algebra students are showing more students meeting their expected growth than last year on Winter Map. This data helps support the identification of math resources at the secondary level for next year. When looking at teacher data, we continue to utilize our math instructional review to expedite the work, and this information has driven both our math priority and professional learning plan for this year, but also multi-year planning. An opportunity that was highlighted from the review that supports identifying high-quality instructional resources with aligned professional learning is to prioritize deepening students' conceptual understanding to meet the demands of grade level standards with a particular emphasis on the high school course sequence. This data led to last year's algebra curriculum adoption with the plan to scale the adoption to geometry and algebra 2 with trigonometry this year. In the box on the left, you will see teacher data and reflections who are currently utilizing illustrative math and algebra courses in middle and high school. Highlighted are the celebrations and student thinking that teachers are seeing in math classrooms, but also the supports for students who may be struggling available within the curricular resource. These supports allow teachers the time to respond to student needs as opposed to creating or sourcing their own materials. We then dug into an examination of research-based practices for math courses. As we know, materials matter, and we want to make sure we are providing focus on the major content of where the standards emphasize, coherently connecting the curriculum across and within grade levels, and rigor to pursue conceptual understanding, procedural skills and fluency, and application in math classrooms. This learning has been a focus for all educators who teach math across the district and identifying where these key shifts live in our current resources. We also know we want to ensure that our students are doing the cognitive lift in classrooms to emphasize and prioritize conceptual understanding. Creating a consistent structure for secondary math classrooms allows students a cohesive math experience and broadened our focus to ensure we were prioritizing this type of math classroom 612.
We just wanted to make sure you saw this one. We had to go back and forth. We got some feedback previously to make this slide much more accessible, so we appreciate that. We don't have a rope, but we have a heat map. That's what this is called, as I've learned. But what's represented here is that, as Carrie said, materials matter, but the body of research and data on the impact of high-quality instructional materials is clear. Curriculum choices matter, and instructional materials have a direct impact on student learning outcomes. But how teachers use curriculum matters even more. What you see reflected in this graphic is the number of professional learning experiences that our district teachers and leaders engage with throughout the year. So this is reflecting 3 at the bottom of our Institute days, in which we just engaged in on Friday, all the way up to 6,734 sessions of professional learning communities and department meetings throughout this school year, and everywhere in between. So this is across EC, early childhood to grade 12 throughout just this current school year, aligned to our strategic priorities and instructional focus areas. Tonight, you've heard about the phases that the district takes in an effort to elevate student outcomes and instructional practices. This year's cycle of continuous improvement has led to the recommendation of social studies, world language, and math curricular resources. For English language arts, we are currently working with the middle school ELA steering committee to evaluate curricular materials, and I will share the steering committee's recommendation at the March board meeting. Throughout this year, for social studies, Inquire Ed has been used by elementary school teachers who elected to serve as early adopters. Next year, all K-5 teachers will utilize Inquire Ed. In 6th grade, Inquire Ed will also be used for daily social studies instruction. Inquire Ed aligns with the revised Illinois Social Studies Standards, the Illinois Instructional Mandates, and the 6th aligned ISB competencies, which focuses on inquiry and informed action. The materials also align with the Common Core shift of building knowledge through content-rich nonfiction texts. The world language materials recommended include the text Berto and His Good Feet to be used in Spanish 2 and the textbook used for the new AP Spanish Literature and Culture course offering.
Continuing to math, we are proposing to create a cohesive secondary math experience and to continue to deepen our students' conceptual understanding with grade level standards. We're proposing scaling our use of Imagine Learning's illustrative math to grades 6-8 mathematics and to geometry and algebra 2 with trig. As a reminder, the Board of Education approved last year illustrative math's use in algebra. This research-based resource provides a comprehensive curriculum that fully addresses grades 6 through 8, geometry and algebra 2 Common Core state standards. The resource allows students to spend the majority of their time on major work of the grade, attend to the full intent of the modeling practice, and meet the expectations of rigor and practice content connections. All algebra courses currently use this, and this would create an aligned and cohesive experience in secondary math. I will now briefly walk us through the timeline and next steps. This evening, we are proposing materials for math, social studies, and language. At the March Board of Education meeting, as Katie mentioned, we will update the instructional materials proposal with a presentation to add a 6-8 ELA instructional resource. Beginning this evening, after this presentation, all materials will be available for review. The Spanish 2 text is available in print at district office, but all other materials are available digitally for the community to review. You can access the materials and information by going to our website and going to Instructional Materials 2024-25 under the Resources tab. This will be updated on March 12th with additional ELA materials as well. On the website, there is a review form where any community member may express their concerns, suggestions, or complaints about a particular resource. These materials will be displayed until April 10th, at least 30 days in alignment with board policy. At the April 16th Board of Education meeting, we will provide an update and recommendation for approval to all of you. Thank you so much, and we welcome any questions at this time.
Just going to put it out there again that these are open for public viewing in different modes, web-based and also in person. So we encourage those interested in curricular resources to take a look and provide feedback to the district office, aside from, of course, board members also taking a look and analyzing. Any other comments from the board? Kara?
So thanks for the thorough, analysis that went behind this and the thorough, although I'm missing the reading rope for next time. Okay, so just a couple things, I guess, we're doing some new instructional materials, quite a few, and I guess I would ask, what is the lifespan? And I don't mean like the actual, book, but more, I guess, how long do you anticipate that this curriculum would be used before being reviewed and potentially, feeling like something new needed to be added or adopted? Yeah.
So in terms of materials, a healthy cycle of monitoring progress, obviously we will do it yearly, but 6 years is a very typical approach that districts take in terms of assessing both the time allowed for shifting practice and implementation of like even internalizing the materials. So typically we say about 3 years for a teacher to use the materials to really hit her stride, but we'll really take a look and step back at 6 years. To assess the intended outcomes and the goal, in terms of student outcomes as well as teacher practice. We're doing it yearly, but we aren't going to be changing materials outside of that 6-year cycle.
And then if the state were to change their testing at all, do you anticipate that we would be able to adjust, I guess I would say make some tweaks, or do you see us needing to, I realize you don't know what the changes would be, but I guess just kind of, does it feel like this is a pretty well-aligned curriculums?
Yeah, so I think, the state recently introduced their literacy plan in which our core curricular resources are aligned to. And so kind of that rubric we're using to assess those are directly in alignment with kind of that state, do I call it a mandate? State mandate and expectations around what students are learning for literacy instruction, and Katie can go into far more detail on that. And for math, right, if there's going to be any change in standards, certainly that would be a multi-year work. We are in line with the Common Core state standards, and so if those changed, that would be a multi-year process, I think, that we could certainly get ahead of. And so we're really looking for our resources to be in alignment with the current standards. And make sure that we are best meeting those needs.
Yeah, and we're actually, District 205 is actually ahead of the curve. A lot of districts, given the new release of the statewide literacy plan and the research to reading and development, we actually implemented a standards aligned, high quality research based resource. And we've done that in reading and we've done that in math. And so I actually anticipate that there will not be significant need in terms of curricular needs, given the level and the depth of analysis that has been done with those resources, as well as its alignment to our Common Core standards.
And the only other thing I would add to that that's important that we don't name as like a phase, but in terms of that evaluating our curricular resources as it relates to research-based practices, we're also doing this in connection with our DuPage County colleagues. And so, for example, for our social studies curricular evaluation, we connected with other school districts across DuPage County. We consulted with the DuPage Regional Office of Education. We partnered with the Illinois Civics Hub. We met with other assistant superintendents and directors of curriculum instruction across the state, and we engaged in curriculum exploration with a number of sort of approved vendors, if you will. And so it isn't in isolation that this is being done. It is really with the experts in the field and as well as our colleagues across the DuPage County. So we are confident that we are headed in the right direction.
Okay, awesome. And then just one more thing about the professional development on the very cool orange, whatever that is. Yeah. Okay. So obviously a lot of professional development happening, and just a couple questions about that, because besides just introducing the materials, and I know you've been doing some piloting, is pacing a part of that professional development in just kind of how you pace it to make sure that, if everything's being aligned to our assessments, then pacing to make sure you get through what is needed. Is that part of that professional development?
Absolutely, right? So there's the balance of implementing the resource, but then also responding to student needs. So I'll just speak to illustrative math in particular. They have a really nice support, which was something that our teachers highlighted as a strength of the resource, that you can dip down into maybe something that students might be struggling with, and they actually identify, if you're going to dip, here's an opportunity for a lesson that you might not need anymore because you supported it in this way. And so really being thoughtful as opposed to pausing and saying we need to reteach exactly what we did yesterday, right? But thinking about what do our students need and where are they, while also being cognizant of pacing, right? Because we want students to be exposed to the full depth and breadth of the standards. And so to Mr. Collins' point, during the data presentation, that is, an opportunity that we saw was making sure that students across math were really being exposed to all the grade level content, particularly in the high school course sequence. And so this is really a nice opportunity to have that resource to make sure that we are covering the depth and breadth of the standards.
Perfect. All right, I got one last thing.
I will also add one other really important piece that we're excited about that actually Jake highlighted is the curriculum embedded assessments. And so part of the pacing and feedback from our teacher learning communities is also ensuring we have the right standards that we are reporting on per trimester or semester, and also identifying those aligned artifacts. And so teachers are not only supported with pacing, but then what artifacts are showcasing students manifesting those standards in practice. And so the pacing is critically important because our teachers also report on that. And so the reporting drives it. We also have a lot of work that will highlight in June. I think we're going to do another presentation on a professional learning update, but over the summer, that is the work that our teachers come in and really focus in on, is reflections on the pacing and adjustments. This is particularly led to in the middle grades for next year. For Amplify, we'll actually be addressing all 6 modules of study because we're shifting to daily science, but we've also reflected on that students weren't meeting the breadth and depth of those science standards I think we were only teaching 3 modules, and we'll move to 6. And so we make adjustments within from teacher feedback as well.
So this may come in June when you come back with professional development, but could you at some point, now or another time, but just speak to how the instructional coaches at each school provide more real-time, I would call it, professional development that goes along with these new materials?
Absolutely. I think that's something we can definitely highlight in June.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you. Moving on to C, bus transportation report.
Thank you. Good evening. So as you know,
Good evening. Mr. Welton.
thank you. As you know, we have 2 busing contracts. The first student is our contractor for general ed students, and the busing market has been significantly, they've faced significant inflation over the last few years. 2 years ago, the increase was 17%. Last year's increase was 12%, and this year the increase is 9.9%. And what's driving the increases is the labor shortage for bus drivers. So it's really the biggest driver is trying to provide salary and benefits in order to attract and retain bus drivers. So First Student does, has a number of ways. They have their regular bus drivers, and then they have standby bus drivers to step in, and then they also have substitute bus drivers. And today, like eight bus drivers called off sick this morning. So then, we then the standby bus drivers and the substitute bus drivers fill in, and then we had 3 late buses today. And in this contract, we've put in performance penalties. So on those 3 late buses this morning, we've enforced the penalties, and we are tracking that and trying to improve it. So they also have lots of drivers who are currently being trained and are in the pipeline to become drivers. And then we have a few drivers that are returning from long-term absences, and so they'll be coming back this week. So there's a lot going on. It's a challenging area, but we were able to get the increase under double digits this year. The first student contract this year is projected to be about $4 million or $4,032,000. So the approximate increase of 9.9% on that is $399,168 for next year. I've talked a little bit about the wages and benefits, and there's a new labor law requiring paid time off for part-time employees, along with gas prices and the cost of the equipment. The cost of buses has really escalated exponentially over the last few years. And then as far as Cottage Hill is our contractor for special education busing. That is estimated to be about 1.9 million this year, and the increase of 9.9% is 186,120 for next school year. So this is our report. Next board meeting, March 12th. These contracts will be recommended for approval. Any questions?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Thank you. So Chris, last year when we added these penalties into the contract, it was because of the frustration that, with the increase, we really didn't see an improvement in services. We were struggling a lot of times. Do you feel like there was a positive impact in services from last year to this year?
I do. Not nearly as many late buses this year. We had a problem today, but it's not been nearly as often. There's a few long-term absences on a few routes, but they're going to be coming back soon. No, so I would say we've had a significant improvement this year over last year as far as the busing performance.
And the penalties in the contract, that section, are they the same as the previous contract, or have they changed?
They're the same.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, can you rattled off a couple percentage increases over the last 3 years. What were they again? I have 9.9 for this year on the larger, not the Cottage Hill.
2 years ago was 17%, and last year was 12%.
So a 39% increase in 3 years is what we saw.
Yes.
I'm just making sure my math is right. Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, looking forward to seeing that next month. Thanks, Chris. Moving on to the consent agenda, is there anything anyone would like to pull? Seeing no, can we have a motion for the consent agenda, please?
I move that the Board of Education approve the following consent agenda items: A, personnel report; B, financial report; C, approve exchange student for 24-25 school year; D, food service Northern Illinois Independent Purchasing Cooperative agreement approval; and E, international travel request for 2024-25.
I'll second.
Motion by Mrs. Troutman, second by Ms. Hostler. Can we please call the vote?
Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hassler?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes.
Dr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Assef?
Yes.
And Mrs. Arvanitis?
Yes, 7 ayes, 0 nays, motion passes. On to the agenda action items. A is the resolution abating a portion of the tax heretofore levied for the year 2023 to pay debt service on the general obligation refunding school bonds series 2015. Is that Chris?
So we had Elizabeth Hennessy here last board meeting to discuss this item, but we are looking at an abatement of $633,825 of the debt service extension. This reduces the debt service extension from $16,075,981 in the 23 levy to $15,442,156. This option maintains the debt service extension at the same level as last year, and lowers the debt service extension amount equal to the 2025 levy, in which the debt service extension flattens in all future years thereafter. And on a $500,000 house, this abatement would provide $39 in tax relief to taxpayers.
Great. Can we have a, oh, sorry. Were you?
Go ahead. I'm good.
Are you sure? I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
Can we have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution abating a portion of the tax heretofore levied for year 2023 to pay debt service on the general obligation refunding school bonds series 2015.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mrs. Assef, second by Dr. Henry. Can we please call the vote? Oh, sorry, before we do that, are there any comments from the board? My bad. Sorry, any comments from the board on the resolution for extension? None? Okay, and we did have this discussion at the last board meeting too, so thank you. Can we please call the vote?
Mrs. Assaf?
Yes.
Dr. Henry?
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Hassler?
Yes.
And Mrs. Arvanitis?
Yes, 6 ayes, 0 nays, or motion passes. We're on to B, which is the approve updated 24-25 and 25-26 school calendars.
Yes, administration recommends that the board approve the following revisions to the school calendars for 24-25 and 2025-2026. Revise the spring break weeks to align to the DuPage ROE recommendations for both school years, moving them both to the following week. Note that in 25-26, this means Good Friday will fall during spring break, so we will end student attendance one day earlier than planned while maintaining 177 student attendance days, 4 institutes, and 1 parent-teacher conference day. For 24-25, November 5th, 2024, we will need to be closed for Election Day due to a state requirement. In response to this, Tuesday, May 27th, 2025 will now become a staff institute day. If there is a school closure, this date will turn into a student attendance day to meet the 176 minimum student attendance day requirement.
Can we have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the 2024-25 and 2025-26 district calendar changes as presented.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mrs. Assa, second by Ms. Hassler. Are there any comments from the board? Kara?
I just wanted to, if you could just sort of highlight this again. So the election day piece is required now by the state that we have to be closed. We can't, we have to totally close.
Yeah, it references Illinois House Bill 3034 and Illinois School Code 105 ILCS 5/24-2. Yep.
So even though it's a disruption to the learning and requires families to figure out childcare, we have to close.
Yes, all public schools in the state of Illinois must close on the 5th of November.
Okay, so thank you. I just think that's important to highlight that, tonight we've talked about both, learning standards and, busing is mandated, and now, this is now changing the calendar, and, those decisions are not made by us. And so it's important that people are aware of who's making those decisions, and how they impact our families. And I feel for families having to figure that out for childcare. So thanks.
Any other comments? Can we please call the vote?
Mrs. Assaf?
Yes.
Mrs. Hassler?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Dr. Henry?
Yes.
And Mrs. Arvanitis?
Yes. 6 ayes, 0 nays, motion passes. C is the Foundation 205 donation.
Hi, everyone. We have a really exciting opportunity here in front of us tonight with big thanks to Foundation 205. Last year, I think in the spring, we presented Foundation 205 with a possible project proposal that came from a teacher that recommended an idea as a themes grant that we thought would be possibly beneficial to all schools, K-5. And what it is in a nutshell is a piloted approach in which we would buy a series of intentional and very thoughtful supplies that directly align to specific units in our Wit and Wisdom curriculum. So for example, 4th grade module 3, the redcoats are coming. There's a series of posters that would come, flags that represent that actual conflict at the time, etc. And the goal here is to really help even further bring to life an already amazing and strong and highly engaging curriculum with really consistent learning experiences across the different classrooms. So this proposal and recommendation, and has already been agreed upon with Foundation 205, is for $45,353. It would be supplies for students in grades K, 3, 4, and 5 to start. It'd be one module in each of those 4 grades. We're really excited to see how this goes. You can see the list of supply items there as well. Some really fun things that we think are going to really, again, enhance what's already a really exciting classroom experience. So super, super thrilled to be able to have this here. I want to give thanks to my colleague Katie Lyons as well as the teachers who started this. We also had a team of teachers who recommended these supplies, and we worked through some series of feedback as well to help narrow it down a little bit.
Great. Can we have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve a donation not exceeding $45,353 from Foundation 205 to purchase the Living the Learning supplies as presented.
I'll second.
Motion made by Dr. Henry, second by Mrs. Hostler. Are there any comments from the board?
I'd just like to once again point out how in awe and amazement I am with Foundation 205 and how much they give to our kids across all of our buildings and all the opportunities they give them. And I'm eternally grateful for all the work that the foundation does for our students.
Thank you. And on behalf of us all, I think we're all in agreement on that one. The great work that they do and the mission that they have and how their efforts go directly to students in our classrooms is really profound. So thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay, can we please call the vote?
Dr. Henry?
Yes.
Mrs. Hassler?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes.
Mrs. Assef?
Yes.
Mrs. Arvanitis?
Yes, 7 ayes, 0 nays, motion passes. On to superintendent's communication. We have a Institute Day highlight. Dr. Campbell.
Thank you. On Friday, we held our February Institute Day, which provided our 4th full day of the plethora of professional learning opportunities that were displayed on our heat map for educators across the district, with the common theme of elevating student learning and aligning our Tier 1 instruction. We held, past Friday, 39 different sessions for educators to engage in role-specific learning aligned to supporting students. I had the opportunity to welcome all educators virtually and align the day's work with our students' journey of excellence, with a moment of gratitude for each of them. I also provided them with a little bit of time, 2 minutes to be exact, for them to thank a colleague for how they have supported the work in elevating student outcomes and success this first half of the year. In addition to that, I was able to visit multiple sites, and I saw our teachers actively engaged and committed to continuous improvement across all content areas. It was so powerful to see our teachers coming together across buildings to collaborate with one another. A special thank you to our administrators, our instructional coaches, and our directors who led these sessions and allowed for us to provide meaningful learning to every educator in D205. Can we pause and give them a round of applause? This learning is not only supporting a strong finish for this year, but it's setting us up for a successful start for next year. And yes, we are already thinking about next year. I would also like to mention that the 5 Essentials Survey is open. The Illinois 5 Essentials Survey provides a comprehensive picture of schools' organizational culture and individualized reporting measures in 5 essential critical areas for school success. We're asking our students, our parents, and our staff to please take the survey. You can do that by visiting D205 website and click on the pop-up, and that link will take you to the appropriate survey and to begin. This will also be included in tonight's board highlights. Finally, I would like to share that our next edition of our Community Connections newsletter will be arriving in mailboxes any day. This edition includes a dual language highlight on the district's dual language program, written in both English and Spanish, accompanied by a video. I'm also excited to share that one of the stories in this edition, a great article about the new D205 CARES program being launched as a result of the $249,000 grant the district received from Illinois Department of Public Health, was written by one of our junior York High School students, Catherine Brody. In celebrating, I think that it is so timely in acknowledging that our student actually wrote the article is so befitting because guess what? This week, February 19th through the 24th, has been designated Scholastic Journalism Week throughout the country. And York Community High School has 4 student-run publications spanning nearly 100 years of collective coverage, including our York High News magazine, Whitetails Yearbook, thisisyork.org, and online student news and YTV Media. Scholastic journalists at York have been responsible for amplifying student voice, featuring the outstanding work of faculty and staff, and reporting on current issues and events throughout the district. On behalf of the Board of Education and Administration, we celebrate our journalism program. So, our highlight for tonight, I'm sure you can guess it, will be the sharing of our dual language video with you that will come immediately after our FOIA report.
Thank you. And I'm sure it was a great Institute Day. What I think is most remarkable is as we walk in and out of buildings is that you're seeing the collaboration, but really observing our teachers who are modeling what they're learning and like that continuous learning for kids, right? Because they're working on their craft and their profession and constantly learning and trying new things and taking risks and seeing how it goes and tweaking and moving. And so thank you to our staff, not just our teachers, all our staff who are working so hard to support really everything that the board and of course the administration have been working towards for the last, since a handful of years, but more specifically with the most recent strategic plan. So thank you for all your work too to the team around the table. With that, we'll move on to the FOIA requests. Item B under Superintendent Communication.
One FOIA request for certified staff retiring granted. One FOIA request for union grievance complaints granted. One FOIA request for York parking spots granted. One FOIA with 9 requests from Shrub Oak School records granted, some not in possession and denied. One FOIA with 9 requests from Shrub Oak School records granted in part and not in possession. One FOIA request for communication with League of Women Voters granted, and one FOIA request for communication with Lisa O'Halloran granted.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Communication highlights, item C.
And without further ado, our dual language video.
¿Verdad? Intentan usar esto para hablar con sus compañeros en vez, porque ahorita estamos, ¿qué color? Verde. Vamos a intentar en español. Claro, puedes usar un poco de inglés si no sabes, sí está bien, pero vamos a intentar por lo menos esto. Pulgar.
The district uses a 2-way dual language model to deliver bilingual programming for English learners with Spanish as their home language. The dual language program began in kindergarten in 2016 at Conrad Fisher Elementary School, and since then the program has moved up 1 grade level per year.
Planear un día en 2 idiomas es mucho trabajo, es muy difícil, pero realmente muestra cómo trabajadores son los maestros aquí en Fisher, porque es extra trabajo ser un maestro de lenguaje dual.
What I like about speaking 2 languages in class
is that I could get topics easier. Science, Spanish, or like biographies, English. I could learn these different stuff, and I could use what I learned for at home. Lo que me gusta de hablar dos idiomas en clase es que me puedo comunicar con otros niños en los dos idiomas y no tener que batallar si no sé escribir una palabra en inglés o en español, porque tengo compañeros que me puedan ayudar.
Students who participate in a dual language program have a number of benefits from learning in two languages. Just to underscore one, engagement in a dual language learning environment affords students with the opportunity to develop bilingualism, biliteracy, and cultural understanding among English learners and non-English learners.
I feel that as a kindergarten teacher, we see a ton of growth from the beginning of the school year to the very end, and to see my students flourish through their path and their journey through education from the very beginning of the school year, where everything is all so new, the school, the classroom, the content, to the end of the year where now they're reading and writing and forming conversations and developing friendships in English and in Spanish is truly empowering and more than anything impressive.
Para ser un educador en Fisher se necesita tener un corazón grandísimo. Hay que estar siempre trabajando arduamente y nuestro personal de los maestros, el personal de la escuela, siempre está trabajando arduamente para poder llegar a todas las familias, a todos los procesos, y se necesita un corazón grandísimo para trabajar dos veces, y estoy tan orgulloso de nuestro equipo en la escuela Fisher.
Después de completar el programa de lenguaje dual en Conrad Fisher Elementary, los estudiantes mueven a Churchville Middle School y allí pueden continuar su viaje a ser bilingüe tomando clases en español e inglés a la vez. La misión de nuestro programa de lenguaje dual en Distrito 205 es que todos los estudiantes desarrollen su bialfabetismo y bilingüismo, obtener niveles altos de rendimiento académico y competencia cultural, y también pueden ser exitosos en una sociedad global.
Thank you for that. Board member communications. Any board members have anything to present or report on to the full board? Seeing none, we'll go to upcoming meetings. March 6th, 2024, we have a Finance and Operation Committee meeting beginning at 5:30 p.m. March 12th is a regular Board of Education meeting at 7 p.m. And April 3rd is a Policy Committee meeting at 5:30 p.m. All meetings are here at District 205 Center in rooms 215 and 216. And with that, we are at the end of our meeting and adjourned at 8:47. Thank you.